You know, the Democrats' alleged outrage over President Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president might be taken a little more seriously, but for the fact that from day one, Democrats have been trying to bring this president down. And about this whistleblower complaint, CNN has an analyst named Phil Mudd, used to be with the FBI and the CIA, hates Trump. But here's what Mudd said about the whistleblower and the whistleblower complaint.
Somebody says they heard something as an intel official that troubled them enough to lodge a formal complaint to the IG. How unusual.
Boy, I'm about ready to blow a gasket. Can you explain? That is extremely unusual. And I listened to presidential phone calls when I was an official at the White House under George W. Bush in 2001. Can you explain to me, A, why it's the U.S. intelligence community's responsibility to listen to the president of the United States speaking to a foreign leader, and B, why the U.S. intelligence community, under the rules provided by the Democrats in Congress, are responsible to report to the Congress what the president of the United States says. Last I checked, Chris, when I served, we're responsible for chasing the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, and terrorists. We're not responsible for reporting to the Congress what the president says. He can say what he wants, Chris.
So you don't like that somebody snitched on the president?
Correct. But I want to ask the Inspector General why it is, again, the responsibility of the intelligence community guys to say, we got to complain about what the president says, and we, the intel guys, have to go report to Congress about what's going on in the White House. The intel guys, last I checked, reported on North Korea and Iran, not on whether the president wants to make a promise to a foreign leader. I am ticked off. This is completely inappropriate, and the Congress should not be asking the intel guys to go snitch on the president. No.
So what is the mechanism for policing what is done in the White House?
Quit.
Now you know who did put pressure on Ukraine to fire a prosecutor that just so happens to be investigating his son, Hunter Biden? Joe Biden. And he bragged about it.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
Now, this whistleblower thing is just the latest attempt to delegitimize a duly elected president. Remember on election night when CNN's Van Jones attributed Trump's victory to whitelash with zero evidence?
But there's another side to this. People have talked about a miracle. I'm hearing about a nightmare. It's hard to be a parent tonight for a lot of us. You tell your kids, don't be a bully. You tell your kids, don't be a bigot. You tell your kids, do your homework and be prepared. And then you have this outcome, and you have people putting children to bed tonight, and they're afraid of breakfast. They're afraid of, how do I explain this to my children? I have Muslim friends who are texting me tonight saying, should I leave the country? I have families of immigrants that are terrified tonight. This was many things. This was a rebellion against the elites. True, it was a complete reinvention of politics and polls, it's true. But it was also something else. We've talked about race. I mean, we've talked about everything but race tonight. We've talked about income. We've talked about class. We've talked about region. We haven't talked about race. This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president, in part.
White lash? I'm sure that made sense to somebody.
Hell, I was born here, and I was raised here, And dadgummit, I'm gonna die here. And no sidewinding, bushwhacking, hornswoggling, crocker is gonna roll my biscuit cutter.
Now, who can argue with that?
Whoa, Mr. Jones. Donald Trump received 57% of the white vote, actually a lower percentage than was achieved by Mitt Romney. And Barack Obama got a higher percentage of the white vote than did John Kerry. By the way, Obama got 95% of the black vote. None dare call that a blacklash. There were 700 counties that voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. 200 of them switched to Donald Trump in 2016. When were they bitten by that racist radioactive spider? And the town of over 100,000 that voted more for Trump than any other town was Abilene, Texas. Abilene, Texas is roughly 75% white, 10% black. Guess what? They recently voted a black mayor. First time in their 136-year history. White lash? Now, some 70 Democrats boycotted Trump's inauguration.
What started as a sporadic protest has grown to include roughly a quarter of all House Democrats.
There's nothing for me to celebrate.
Including Pennsylvania's Dwight Evans and Tennessee's Steve Cohen.
And when he questioned John Lewis, they crossed the Rubicon.
And nearly a dozen Democrats boycotted his first State of the Union speech.
The annual State of the Union address usually draws a packed house, but this year there will be several empty seats, the result of an historic boycott. 3 members of Congress from Chicago among those who say they can't accept President Trump's behavior.
I cannot normalize and act as if this is the new normal of today with this president. His language, his actions that really are changing the character of this country.
And then there was that attempt to get the electors not to certify the election. Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, wrote an op-ed piece in the Washington Post saying this: the Obama administration should brief members of the Electoral College on the extent and manner of Russia's interference in our election before they vote on December 19, 2016 to certify the election. End of quote. And Trump's refusal to turn over his tax returns, something, by the way, that Speaker Nancy Pelosi hasn't done, even though she's second in line for the presidency, generated cries of corruption. Here's what Representative Bill Pascrell, Democrat from New Jersey, said. What's unprecedented is Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin's refusing to comply with our lawful request. What's unprecedented is a Justice Department that again sees its role as being bodyguard to the executive and not the rule of law. What's unprecedented is an entire federal government working in concert to shield a corrupt president from legal accountability. End of quote. Now, as I mentioned, Nancy Pelosi hasn't turned over her tax returns either.
H.R. 1 would legally require the president and vice president to release their tax returns. Should House Speaker Pelosi be required to release her tax returns, yes or no?
Well, that's a question that I think you should direct to Speaker Pelosi.
And then there was the attempt to invoke the 25th Amendment on the grounds that President Trump was mentally unfit to discharge the duties and powers of his office.
You tweeted this. Senator Gillibrand is a fierce advocate for women who deserves the utmost respect. The president hasn't seen the full wrath of America's women yet, but he's about to. 25th, the 25th Amendment. What are you saying here, Congresswoman?
Well, I've been speaking out about the invocation of the 25th Amendment since early this year, because I do think the president is not equipped to do the job.
This led to the extraordinary press conference by President Trump's personal physician. And you could just hear the air coming out of that impeachment balloon.
All clinical data indicates that the president is currently very healthy and that he will remain so for the duration of his presidency.
And then there was the outcry over the payments to President Trump's former mistresses. Impeachable, right?
And last night in a speech, I said that for if some reason Mueller does not get him, Stormy will.
Oh, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one quarter of the quartet, says that from day one, the president has been in violation of the Emoluments Clause, an impeachable offense as far as she's concerned.
If you were drafting the articles of impeachment for the president, what would be Article 1, 2, and 3?
Well, I think number one is emoluments. I think it's always been emoluments. I think it's always been about that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Really, AOC? For what? For getting fair market value when, for example, someone stays at a Trump resort?
The so-called emoluments clause has never been interpreted, however, to apply to fair value exchanges that have absolutely nothing to do with an office holder.
Nice try. Oh, wait a minute. Representative Al Green says President Trump should be impeached because of his racist anti-squad tweets. Really? Green tweeted, quote, Trump's racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and Islamophobia can no longer be tolerated or ignored. We must impeach. And of course, for 2.5 years, we've had the Mueller investigation into allegations of collusion. After 2.5 years, he dug a dry hole on the issue of collusion, on the issue of obstruction of justice. He punted. Even Bill Maher, when he had Schiff on his show, said, look, at this point, it almost looks as if you're persecuting the president.
But this was our big gun. Now it just looks like you're stalking him. I think in the eyes of the people who don't follow it that closely, which is most of the country, here's the thing about Bob Mueller. He's like the last person, maybe the last thing in America that left and right agreed on. Left and right basically agreed. This is a guy of honor. This is an honest guy. This is an honest broker. Whatever he says goes. Americans are not into details. Don't read it to me, Bob. Just give me a thumbs up, a thumbs down. The fact that he was like, I don't. If you couldn't impeach before, how are you going to impeach after?
So, Democrats have been trying to impeach Trump from day one, and this latest attempt may very well result in an impeachment. And if so, President Trump will be found not guilty in the Senate. And then he can credibly call himself a victim and cruise to re-election in 2020. Note to Mr. Schiff, note to Ms. Pelosi, the best laid plans can sometimes blow up right in your face.
To all of the Trump haters,
I'm Larry Elder, and this has been the Larry Elder Show for Epic Times. I'll see you next time. Go Trump 2020.